Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we find facts and fine-tune figures. Welcome back. So, on today's episode of Fabric with Francis, I'll be showing us an end-to-end project with Microsoft Fabric. So, the end-to-end project will involve the Power BI experience, Synapse engineering experience, data factory experience, and also data science experience. When I was thinking about the project to use for end-to-end fabric demonstration, I came across Global Peace Index, which is a composite index measuring the peacefulness of countries made up of 23 quantitative and qualitative indicators, each weighted on a scale of 1 to 5. The lower the score, the more peaceful the country is. So this report is prepared by Institute of Economics and Peace, and you can download the complete report right from here. So the 2023 report take account of 163 countries, and also you can find the data set somewhere down on the website right here, and then you can download the data set right from here, and then you can play also with this project. So this is the background story for the project we are going to be working on. Come with me. So here is the architectural diagram of this project. I'll walk us through this architectural diagram now so that we can understand what this workflow for this project is going to be. So every tenant comes with one lake, which is the universal storage for all the data assets. So to access assets in your one lake, you have to create a workspace. So from your workspace, you can then switch to either a data engineering experience, which can be Synapse engineering or with your data factory, or it could be your data science experience, or it can even be Power BI experience. So for this project now, we are going to be using all these experiences to deliver our project. Now you create your lakehouse within your data engineering experience. Right after that, you can then use your data flow gen 2 to ingest data into your lakehouse. But because we want to have a notification for our data flow gen 2, we are going to also design a pipeline. So on that pipeline also, we are going to have a Outlook activity. Pipeline is just a collection of activity arranged in a logical order. So our pipeline is going to consist a data flow activity and also a Outlook activity so that we can get notification if anything is happening to our data flow that is ingesting data into the lakehouse. So that will be the end of the data engineering experience. So we can then move to our data science experience. So once you are within data science experience in your workspace, you go back to your lakehouse. So on your lakehouse, you can then open up your notebook where you can write your code, be it your Spark code, R or Python code. So in this project, we are going to be writing codes for time series forecasting model. There are various time series forecasting model. We are going to use two for this our project. We are going to use ARIMA model, and we are also going to use the Facebook Prophet model. So these two models we are going to be using it to predict the global peace index for this project. Then lastly, we are going to do the Power BI workload, which is going to require us going back to our lakehouse. And then from our lakehouse, we can then navigate to the SQL endpoint. So from SQL endpoint, then we can go to our modeling view. So in this modeling view, we can model our data. In our case, we don't need to model any data because we have just a single table. If you have multiple tables, this is where you can actually do your data modeling. You can also write your DAX right from here, and then you can connect to it and create your report. So for this project in particular, instead of creating our project inside of Power BI service, we are going to be using Power BI desktop because of functionalities that are not yet available on Power BI service. Come with me. So I'm already signing into my Power BI account. So I'm going to create a workspace for the purpose of this demonstration. So I'll click on workspaces, then I'll click on new workspace. Then I will give our workspace a name. Let me call it E2E, which means end to end. Then I'll click on apply. And I'll also ensure that this workspace that I've created is actually fabric enabled, which we can confirm by this little diamond icon here. Now expectedly our workspace is supposed to be empty, but we want to start from data engineering workload. So before I switch to data engineering workload, I just want to show us the new things that we can create once we are on Power BI workflow. So I will change it to data engineering workflow now. So once I change it to data engineering workflow, these are the new things that we can create with data engineering workflow. So in our case now, we are creating a lake house where we are going to be storing our data. So I will call our lake house a GPI. Then I will just click on create. So that will create a lake house for us. Expectedly also, our lake house is supposed to be empty. Then we can ingest data into our Lakehouse using either a pipeline, a shortcut, or even data flow gen 2. So the option we are going to be opting for now is data flow gen 2. So I will select that, which is going to open up Power Query online interface for me. So I can then bring in data like way you do it on Power Query desktop. So once Power Query is open for me, I am going to use the method of import from Power Query templates because I had done the data cleaning and transformation the first time. So just to save us our time, so I will just import the Power Query template that I had exported. So I'll click on import from Power Query template. So once I do that, it is going to open up my local machine for me. I have that template in my downloads folder, so I will select it and I will click on open. Once I click on open, okay, I'm getting this error message now, which is just typical of a trial tenant. So I will do it again. So I will click on import from Power Query template, and then I will select that template once more and click on open. So once I click on open, I expect that all the transformation and data cleaning that I had done is going to be loaded into my Power Query now. So it's still not loading, so I'll just click on reload and refresh this entire page. So once I click on reload, then I will try and bring in the template once more. So now if you notice, when I loaded, it is now data flow 2. Before I loaded, it was actually data flow 1. So I will just click on import Power Query template, and then I will click on GPI, which is the Power Query template that I had prepared earlier where I had done the transformation and data cleaning. So I will click on open now. So I expect that it's going to import all the transformation that I have done on my data. So thankfully we have it now. So before we go continue, we have to configure the connection so that this warning icon will disappear from our data set, and then we can see what actually happened behind the scene. So I'll click on configure connection for this first table, then I'll click on connect. So I will do the same thing for our raw data table also. Then I'll also click on connect, configure for configuration, then I will then click on connect. So those two tables will be automatically resolved for me, and then once they are resolved, then I will expect that this GPI table too will be resolved. So quickly let me explain what is going on with this data set now. Now the original data set that I started with is this raw data. So this is the raw data table that I have. Let me go back to the apply step so that we can see the shape in which the data was before I actually transformed it to a shape that is actually useful for this project. So this is how my data was initially. So I did some data cleaning and data transformation till I have my data in this shape. Now when I have my data in this shape, I thought that for my Power BI visualization, I'm going to need continents to do my analysis or to do my data visualization, which is missing in this table. So I went online to look for a table that is having a list of all the countries and their continents. Thankfully, I got one. So, but when I got it eventually, I realized that about two countries that are included in our own data set were missing. So I had to create a table manually using this enter data. So that is why I call this table missing countries. There are about two of them. So I ensure that I name the table the exact same column from the original country table that I had gotten online. So I then did an append transformation between the table that I created manually and table that I got online. So if you go back to this country table now, you will see that I had done some append operation here. So that's why we have an append query, so that the two countries from the missing table is now appended to it. Now from this appended country table now, I then did a merge operation between it and this raw data table so that I can then have a table that include my continent. That is how I came about this GPI table. So if you look at this GPI table now, you see that the first apply source step is actually a source, showing us the kind of merge operation that I perform using that Venn diagram. So I'll just click on continue now so that we can see our table in the way it is now. So now I have my continent column included in our table, which is missing from the raw data. And if you look at the applied steps in the raw data, you see that I had done a lot of transformation. And if I come back to this GPI table now, because I actually did merge as new, that's why I have a separate table where I then expanded the column that is coded. Then I now have my continent selected. So now when we are done doing all of this transformation, the next thing we want to do is to actually specify the destination for our table. In our case now, we are only going to be working with the GPI table. We do not need this other table. So I already disabled them from loading into our destination. So I will stay on GPI table, then I will come to add data to destination. I know that our destination is a Lakehouse, so I will select a Lakehouse already, and then I will click on next. So once I click on next, then I'm expecting to see a list of all the Fabric enabled workspaces, and then from there I can navigate to the lakehouse that we are working with. Remember that we created the workspace for this purpose, which is E to E. Then I'm going to do a drop down now so that I can select the lakehouse I want to move our data to. So then I can click on next. So once I click on next, then I'm going to have an interface where we are going to see some sort of data mapping between the source and the destination. So if I'm happy with the data mapping and is correctly mapped, then I can also go ahead and continue with what I have to do. So I have that interface now, but on this interface now, I'm getting a warning message saying that some column names contain unsupported characters. Should we fix them for you? So I can just scroll down to look at those columns. Yeah, it is this year column, this second year column. Now the unsupported character here is this bracket. So I'll click on fix it. So once I click on fix it, then it's just going to change the bracket into underscore for me. Then I can click on save settings. So by that, destination has been specified for this GPI table. You can see now that okay, destination is now a lakehouse. Now, instead of close and apply in Power Query Desktop, I'm going to do publish now. So I'll click on publish now. So once I click on publish now, I expect that okay, our data flow is now going to ingest data into our lakehouse. But that is not the end of engineering experience for our case. We are still going to be creating a pipeline. Don't forget that we now have two data flow. The first one was when I had error messages, and then this second, which is data flow 2, is the data flow that we are going to be working with in this project, and that is what is actually trying to load now into our lakehouse. So once that loading is done, we can then create a pipeline, and then also we can now define activities within our pipeline. It could be Outlook activity, and then also we are going to be creating a data flow activity in our pipeline. So now that our data flow is loaded successfully, I'm going to just delete this one that was created when it was giving us error. So I will delete it just to avoid the confusion. And I'll also try to rename this data flow to which is the data flow that I'll be using for this project. It's a more meaningful name. So I'll come to property here and call it data flow and call it a data flow GPI, which is global peace index. And I will click on save. So now our data flow has been successfully renamed. Now the next thing we want to do now is to actually create a pipeline where we are going to be arranging a number of activities. So I will click on new. So once I click on new now, so I'll click on the data pipeline where I will have my data flow activity and also my Outlook activity. So let's get our pipeline in. Let's call it pipeline GPI, and I will click on create. So once I click on create, a pipeline will be created for me where I can create other activity that I want to use for the data orchestration and data integration. In our case now, we are going to be having a data flow activity, and also we are going to be having a Outlook activity. So this is our data factory interface. So I'm going to come to our activity tab now. Then I'll select the data flow activity. Then I'll have this card on our Canva where I can then configure it. And let's just call it data flow GPI. Then I'll come to settings right here. Then you can see that on the setting we have notification option, but I'll click on this one. It's saying that it is coming soon. So when this comes now, we can then utilize on this notification. So now I want to come to this data flow and then do a drop down. Then I'll select the data flow that we created from Power Query Online. Then I can now create a Outlook activity for this data flow so that I'll get a notification if our pipeline is running successfully or not. So I'll select Outlook activity. So once I select Outlook activity, it's going to prompt me to grant it access and also grant it permission. So once that is done, we can then connect our data flow activity to our Outlook activity. So I will select on OK now. Then it's going to prompt me to sign in with the same email that I'm using for my Fabric project. So I'll select that email now. So once that is selected, it's also going to ask me for access, which I'm also going to grant. So once I allow access, that means this Outlook activity can now be useful for our pipeline. So I will configure this Outlook activity now. Let's just give it a name now. Let's call it Office 365. Let's call it on success. So on success, then I'll come to settings right here, and then I'll type the email I want to send this notifications, which is at Don Francis at Don Francis 27 dot on Microsoft.com. So after I've given it this email now, I've type this email now, I can then compose the body and the subject of my mail. Let me say pipeline success as the name or subject of my email. So then I'll give the body to also a name. I will say successful. Yeah, so that's for the Outlook activity. So I'm going to create a second Outlook activity if our pipeline fails. So I'll select a second Outlook activity. I'll select this one now, and I'll give it also a name. I'll call it on fail. So after I call it on fail, I'll just come to setting right here and also paste the same email. Then I'll then come to this subject. I'll call it a pipeline. I'll call it pipeline fail. So after I do pipeline fail, I can then put the body to my mail and say, dear Francis, and your pipeline, your pipeline failed. Then I will say, please take action. Say, please take action. So now I have configured uh, my Outlook email for on success and then on failure. So let me just arrange them meaningfully. Now, if you notice on every activity, there are little icons in front of them. This one is saying on skip, this one is saying on success, this one is saying on fail, and then this one is saying on completion. So I'm going to link all these activity together in a logical manner. So from my data flow activity, I want to link on success to on success Outlook activity. And then I also want to link on fail to on fail Outlook activity. So now I have my pipeline arranged in a logical manner. Now I need to run my pipeline and see if our pipeline is actually being constructed well. So before I do that, there is another check that you can do. You can validate your pipeline. So if I click on validate pipeline now, so I get this interface telling me that my pipeline has been validated and no errors were found. So I can then run my pipeline now. So I will be prompted to save and then it will also run at the same time. So my pipeline is being saved, and once it's saved, then the running of the pipeline will then begin. So let's just wait. Now the pipeline is running. So we'll wait to see if the pipeline is running. So if the pipeline runs successfully, I'm supposed to get an email notification telling me that my pipeline has run, and if it's not running also, I'm also supposed to get an email notification that it has failed. So let's just wait for this pipeline to start running. So now it is done. If you can see that it is now in progress. So once it's done, then we'll get a notification on our email if it is running successfully, and if it is otherwise also we will know from the email that we'll be expecting. So now our pipeline has run successfully. It took our data flow pipeline about 2 minutes 50 seconds to run, and then also the Outlook activity for on success as well. So I'm going to navigate to my Outlook account now to see if I genuinely got any email for this notification. So I have it open on this. You see, I have a new pipeline that was saying that site pipeline success. So it's saying success. So that is how to configure your pipeline, and then you add your Outlook activity for whatever notification that you may deem fit for your workflow. So now that we are done with the data engineering workflow, I will go back to our workspace, from where I can then navigate to the lakehouse that we created to see if data was genuinely ingested into this data. So we now have this table in our lakehouse to show us that okay, the data was genuinely ingested. So from here now we can decide on the type of experience that we want to do. We can actually switch to data engineering experience. We are currently on data engineering experience, so we can switch to data science experience, switch to Power BI experience, or whatever the case might be. So in our case now, I want to just switch to a data science experience. So I will come right on here, then I will switch to a data science experience. So it's either I switch to data science experience or I stayed on my previous skin. If I stay on my previous skin, I can quickly just open up a new notebook right from here. So I will click on open new notebook, then I will click on new notebook. So once
Once I click on new notebook, the new notebook will be open for me. So once the new notebook is open for me, the Lakehouse will be automatically loaded into the new notebook. Then I have cells where I can run my Spark code or even Spark SQL or any of the Spark variations that I want to run. So typically, I have this as a default view when I open a new notebook. I can load my data sets into the notebook by clicking on this ellipsis right here. Then I click on load data and then click on Spark, and then I have this code automatically generated for me, which I can then run this particular cell. Now once I run this cell now, the output will be given for me, but it's going to take a little while because the session is just being launched, and then the cell will run automatically. But while that is trying to initiate, we can look at this Spark code. We can realize that it's actually a Spark SQL code, and you can see and select SQL statement embedded in double quotes. So the Spark package session is starting now, and then it will be launched in a short while. Now our cell has run successfully. Now for this data science workload, what we are going to do is time series forecasting. There are various type of time series forecasting, like I mentioned in the architectural diagram, that we are going to be looking at ARIMA model and also the Facebook Prophet model. So but I'm not a data scientist. I don't know how to write codes for this model. How do I get to do it? So come with me as I show you how I generate this code. Right now I'm already on my ChatGPT by OpenAI. So what I do is that I'm going to ask AI to generate code for me. So I'm going to write can you please can you please write me code for machine learning model for Ariman. So once you do that, it's going to generate a code for you, and then you can just read through it and see what is happening with the code. So based on some basic understanding that I have before, I was able to read through the lines of the code and then adjust the code to fit what I need. Even if you use the code in your own notebook and then it's throwing error for you, you can always come back and specify the error that is being generated for you to have a final copy of the code. Even before I do that, you can just ask that, okay, what are time forecasting forecasting model examples? So if you do that also, you can get series of examples and then you can look at any one of your choices. See, the first example is generating for us is the ARIMA model. There is also the SARIMA model that is also being generated. There is an exponential smoothing method. There are a lot of them. So now to be more specific, now you see number 4 is the Prophet model by Facebook. So those are my two choice, the ARIMA model and also the Prophet model. So now I can ask again that write me machine learning code for ARIMA model, assuming assuming my data frame is saved as df and I have following columns. So at this point, you can specify the columns that you have in your data set. I'm just trying to be more specific. Let's say I have the following columns, which is a GPI for the index. I have year column, and also I have country column. So that is going to adjust the code for me, and then I can see a new code now using the exact same column that I have in my data set, and then I can now copy the data set and try to run it in my Spark notebook. So this is how I generate code for models for a data science workload. I can do the same thing also for um for Facebook Prophet model. So if I do that also, let me see, write me let me do that. Write me machine learning code for Facebook Prophet model using the same dataset and columns as above. So you try and be more specific as possible, so that way you get close to something that will run and give you your desired outcome. So however, I won't rule out the fact that I at some point tried to learn data science workload. So that make it easy for me. But as a data analyst or data engineer, you'll be quite familiar with some of the things that you can do with a data science workload. So this is how I get the code for my model, and then I copy it, try them out in my notebook and see if it's actually giving me the desired outcome. And if I run to error too, all I had to do is just to copy the error message, paste it right here that okay, this is the error I'm getting. Can you please write the code for me? Or how do I resolve this error? So now we are back in our notebook where I'm going to just use one of the codes that was generated for me with ChatGPT. So I had actually tried that code out earlier, so I have copied it in another tab. So I'm just going to go to that tab now and then run it, and then you will see how interesting and how awesome it can be to actually work this way. So these are the lines of code, but before I run them now, I will just show us what every line is doing. So this first line is actually like the first line that was automatically generated earlier. So I just adjusted it. What I did was just to remove the limit to 1000 because I want the entire data set to be used for this machine learning model. And then this line is just to change it from Spark data frame to Pandas data frame. Now by default you will see that we are using Spark code. Now at this line now, I'm now importing all the libraries that are necessary, and then I'm creating the aggregated uh, data set, and then I converted this to a numeric data type from which is float. Then I drop rows that are missing, one hot coding for country, because at this point now machine learning models only understand numbers, so I had to change my countries to numbers. So this is a code to actually change all the text or the string data type into numbers, and then I converted them to a numpy array using all of this code. I didn't write all of this code myself. They are written for me by ChatGPT. When I try what I was doing the first time, I ran into error. I copy the error, go back to my ChatGPT, explain the error to ChatGPT, then I got the feedback, and then I adjusted my code accordingly. Then I also changed my date here, also set it as an index. Then lastly, I split the data into a training and test set. Then I initialize and fix the ARIMA model. Then I make prediction based on the test set, then calculated the mean squared error, and then I visualize the result. So this is how I was able to get the code for the ARIMA model. So I'm just going to click on run all right now, and then I will expect that this code is just going to run for me and do the time series forecasting prediction for the global peaks index for each of the countries. So that is how I was able to generate the model and the prediction using the ARIMA model for this particular project. So you can see that our cell is running. It's going to take a while. First, it's going to take time to initialize the session, and after the session has been initiated, then the code will start running cell by cell. So we can see that okay, the first line cell is still trying to run. So once that is done successfully, then sequentially every cell in this workload is going to run, and then we can see the output. So the first cell is running now, and we have the outcome where you have a table of the country, the GPI, and also the year now in date format. So now if you scroll down also, this cell 2 has run, where we are trying to change the data frame into a pandas data frame so that you can manipulate your data using the pandas library of Python, and then now is in pandas data frame. But however, the date here is showing as a Java something that I really do not understand, but I know that it's just a format within a pandas library. And then lastly, I had imported all the necessary libraries, and then every other cell has done. So for you to know, you see that they are being checked as done, and then you see that every cell up to this point has done. Now we are initializing the and fix the ARIMA model. So once that is done also, we expect to see a making prediction based on the test set, and then we can now calculate the mean square error also. And lastly, we'll wait for every other set to run, and then we'll see the output. So now I've been thrown into an error, which I know the obvious reason. Looking at this line of code now, I realized that when I was trying to type for my ChatGPT, I added some characters here, which is this app. So that is why I'm running into error. So I'm going to just take that out now and then run this cell again. Then I expect to get output for myself. So yeah, so this is the ARIMA model for for this global peace index project. Now this chart is looking a bit too clumsy for me. I really do not understand. All I can say from this chart is that the blue line represent the actual global peace index, and then the red line is talking to the prediction. So e really do not care. So but a data scientist will tell you reasons why this model is behaving this way. And also some of the indicators that they can use is this mean square error, which is 0.15. They have certain implications when it comes to testing the accuracy and how effective the model is. So you can read that up to get more insight into it. That was why I tried to actually use Facebook prophet model and see if it's actually going to get any better and more meaningful results. So come with me. I'm just going to run us through the exact same thing that I did just now, but this time with Facebook prophet model. So here is a second model we are going to work into, which is the Facebook prophet model. So I had copied all the codes that I generated just the same way I used ChatGPT to generate the ARIMA model. So I have to install this prophet library and then this every prophet library, and then of course you load your data set into your notebook. However, your loading of data set should come after the library has been installed. If you try to load your data set first into your library, then you now install, you are probably going to run into error. So that's one thing I noticed. The reason why it's happening that way, I really do not know, but it has to be that you install your libraries first, then you load your data set. Then after that, you can go ahead and transform from Spark data frame to pandas data frame, which is what this line of code is doing. And then I imported all the libraries. That's after I have installed the library. You know, I did the installation first here. That's why I did pip install prophet. Now that I have installed it, then I'm calling the library now in part of my code to do the actual visualization and time series forecasting. So I'm just going to click on run while I continue to explain every cell of the code to us. So that will initialize first and then it will start running. So now the library is being installed, which is going to take time. See all this um details which I don't understand. So that will also happen with the next cell. And then lastly, you will see the data set being loaded into our Spark notebook, and then we are expecting to see outcome just like we did for the ARIMA model, and then we change that from Spark data frame to Pandas data frame for this next line of code. So we see that already. Now it is going to change to Pandas data frame also, which is what we have now. And then lastly, which is the where the actual time series forecasting is happening with the prophet model, where I had already done the importation of the necessary libraries, and then all these are already explaining what is happening. We are creating a separate model for each country, time series forecasting using the prophet model. Then you create the prophet model where it is actually storing that variable. And then I'm renaming all the columns into a column that is actually understandable by this model. Then fit the model with the data, forecast the future GPI values, and then plot the forecasting. So once that is done running, it will keep running because we are running for about 163 countries now. The first country I'm saying here is Papua New Guinea. So if I scroll down also, we can see the forecast for New Zealand. So now, if you notice to each of the chart, we have a blue line telling us the actual, and then we have this orange line showing us the forecast. So we are saying that no matter how things are, looking at the historical data sets from 2008 to 2023, this is the point where the forecast is going to be. Now, in this part of the code, there is a place you can actually specify the number of years that you want to actually see. Now, I'm forecasting for 12 months. That is 1 year forward. So now the latest data set that we have is 2023. So it has forecasted up to 2024. So if I change this now to, instead of 12 months, I want to forecast to 2 years. So let me just try that out and do 24. So that will be 2 years. So and then we run this cell, then I will expect that the forecasting will be for 2 years ahead, because the last data set is up to 2023. So that's when the report for Global Peace Index was released that I'm doing this project. So you can see down that the output of our query is now, of our cell is now different. So this is for this country now, Papua New Guinea. So I can scroll down. This is for New Zealand. Then also this is for Australia. So if you keep scrolling that way, you continue to see every country that is listed in this data set. So you can adjust the forecasting range. Is it 2 years? Is it 1 year that you want to do? So that is just for the case of the demonstration. And this brings us to an end for data science workload for this particular project. Now we have a prediction for global peace index that based on historical data, this is what is likely to happen in this particular country. Now, data is one of the things that can actually use to forecast what is going to happen based on what is happening in those countries for the global peace index. But if you look at the complete global peace index report, there are other variables and other factors to consider in predicting what the global peace index is going to be. So you can check that out. I will drop a link in the comment section for you to see where you can actually access the full report and also the data set so that I can also play with it. So thank you. Let us move ahead now to the last experience, which is the Power BI experience. So I will go back into my Lakehouse where I have my data set. So from my Lakehouse now, I will just switch to SQL endpoints. I will switch to SQL endpoint right from here. So once I am on my SQL endpoint, from there I can now navigate to where I can do my data modeling, where I can then write my DAX measures and then do my data visualization eventually. So once this is loaded up now, we can see right above here where we can have new SQL query, new visual query, new report or new measure. And then underneath here also we are on data view. Then you can come to query view if that is what you want to do, and then you can start writing your SQL query, or you can go through this route. And then you can also come to modeling view where you have that interface where you can do your data modeling. But in our case, we have just a single table, so there is no need for data modeling in this case. I think if you have multiple tables, this is where you can then do your data modeling and do your one-to-many relationship, many-to-one as the case may be. Then over on this point, it is showing us that okay, the storage mode is actually in direct link as at when this was created. So to write a new measure now, all you have to do is just to create a new measure and then you write any measure that actually desire. So I can call on any, let me calculate, which is the most popular DAX function. So any measure that you want to write, you can write it here. Now, the interesting thing is that once you are done writing all your measures, it will be stay stored in this lake, and then you can use it to create your new report. Then you click on new report, and then a report will be actually generated for you where you can do your Power BI visualization. So here I actually wanted to do my visualization in this Power BI online within my lake, but I realized that some of the things I will be needing are not actually in Power BI online as of today. So what I did eventually was to connect it live to the data set from the data lake. So how do I do that? All you have to do is just to open your Power BI desktop, where you then come here. Then once you are in your Power BI desktop, this is the exact report we are going to recreate, where I created it, so I won't just bore us with how I created this report. So how to connect to your data set in your Lakehouse using your live connection. You can see that it's saying that connected live to Power BI data set GPI in end to end. So all you have to do is to come to one lake up in your Power BI desktop, and then you can click on Lakehouse. Remember that our data set is inside Lakehouse. Then you can select your Lakehouse. So once you have your Lakehouse selected, it's going to ask you all this, and then you can pick that, and then you can get your data set imported into your Power BI desktop. When you do that, all the DAX that you are also written will also be imported together as part of your model in your desktop. So at this point, if you are connecting this way, Power BI is just a visualization tool because you have done all your data modeling, all your data engineering workflow in Power BI and in your Fabric environment. So all you are doing with Power BI now is you are doing your data visualization and nothing more. And I opted for Power BI desktop because I needed to create this animated bar chart and also this custom shape map. So if you actually interact with this report now, say for example now, I'm just switching to African continent, and then you see this animated bar actually raising from 2008 up to 2023. So 2008 up to 2023, and then you can see how some countries are moving up and down. So if you look at Africa now, you see that from 2008 to 2023, Somalia is staying consistently up, not up until 2017 or so when it now came down. You see that Somalia is still topmost. You can see South Sudan too still topping the country. So if I switch to another continent, for example now, and place close attention to it, you will see. Let's go to Europe. So expectedly, we're expecting that maybe Russia or Ukraine are topping the chart right here, so that we can see what is happening. So from 2008 now, you see how some countries were below, and then suddenly they just jump. See Russia just staying at the top since 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. So this result is not strange. And then you can also see the shape map right here, and you see how we have the GPI trend for the current year and also the previous year. You can see that this trend is almost the same across year for every year across board. And then we have this year on year percentage change for each of the charts where I had already do my conditional formatting for the year. And then when it is less than 1, you see them highlighted in red, which is this one now, for example, now is 0.86. And then I also did a time series forecasting inside Power BI. That's one of the beauty of Power BI. You can do time series forecasting with your line chart. I did projection for 5 years forward. So if you over on this now, you see that we have forecast for this particular year, which is 2024, that at highest we are going to have 1.74 as our GPI and lowest 1.76 for this particular continent, which is the Euro continent. We can see that we have 38 countries right here, and then this is the average GPI for this entire continent. Another interesting thing that I want to show us from this report that that made me opted for Power BI desktop is that there is a very interesting tooltip when you hover on each of these. So if you hover on your map now, you can see the this country, for example. Now when you hover on it, you can see the country and you can see the average GPI for that particular country. So this is Russia, for example, now with average GPI of 2.97. And then you can also see the flag of that country. And then there is a key here telling us what the color on the map is doing, the color gradient. We can see the green side telling us that it's the most peaceful, while the red side is telling us that it is less peaceful. So if you over here and let's play around with your report, like let's say I want to go to Oceania as a continent, you can see all the countries that are there for this particular data set. We have just 3 countries right here: Papua New Guinea, Australia, and New Zealand. So if you over on each of them, you have a tooltip telling us the exact country and also their average GPI. Thank you guys for always joining me. See you in our next video. In our next video, I'm going to be doing a proper data storytelling with this dashboard. See you till next time. Bye.